Point of personal privilege.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to take an opportunity to welcome our newest member, Delegate Bloxham. I wanted to not only congratulate him on his win, but talk a little bit about what his victory means for the rest of us and for Virginia at large. Mr. Speaker, this was, in some respects and many respects, a contest between candidates, but it was also a contest between ideas and competing messages. Mr. Speaker, in many respects, this election was a referendum on the very thing we've been talking about in this chamber day in, day out, that's been reported in the media day in, day out, and that would be the proposed expansion of Medicaid in Virginia. Mr. Speaker, the gentleman was a great candidate. He's going to be a great delegate, and I don't mean to take away from his victory, but it was his opponent who infused this issue so strongly into the race that I feel like I need to talk about that for just a minute. Because indeed, Delegate Bloxham's opponent leading up to yesterday went all in. He bet on the message of Obamacare and expanded Medicaid in his race. The people who helped him, the Democratic Party, the money that supported his campaign on radio and in mail, went all in on this message. I point to one radio ad that said, where Delegate Bloxham's opponent encouraged the voters to, quote, protect the progress Obama has made and expand health care for all Virginians. The mail he sent out said, tell President Obama we've got his back. Now, this would seem like a good strategy in a district that went 55% for President Obama in the last election, that went for, 54% for President Obama, 55% for Senator Kaine. That would seem like a good messaging strategy at first glance. But we now know quite differently, Mr. Speaker. The voters of that district did not flock to this message. They did not rally and rush to the polls to support the message being sent to them and being offered for them to come and stand up for the president and his brilliant plan of Obamacare and the expansion of Medicaid. Didn't happen. And I hope that we got that message, and I hope, moreover, that the governor got that message. It is a much different message than that which he tried to sell to our colleague, the gentleman from Loudoun. And I was interested to hear from the gentleman from Loudoun that had been put to him in such glaring terms. I won't call it a threat. Others can do that if they want to, but we have heard some things from the third floor that sure sound like threats to some of us. So there are threats, and there are anecdotes, and there is wishful thinking, and then there is the results of what happened yesterday in that district, where we see that 2 days ago that was a Democrat seat, and we were joined by our Republican colleague here today. Mr. Speaker, this has, I think, strengthened our resolve, if anything. We are in a position now where we are standing, getting ready to go home. Hopefully, the work of this body and the body down the hall would shortly be done in other circumstances. And the forces are arrayed against those of us who choose a responsible path here. But I hope they were all listening. Not only the governor, the other side of the aisle, the other body down the hall, the editorial boards that have joined forces with them all across the state. I hope they were listening, and I hope those editorial boards will decide to let this message out of what really happened yesterday and what was at issue in this race. Mr. Speaker, we're going to keep holding the line, and our resolve is strengthened by the results of yesterday. Our resolve is strengthened every time a threat is issued to any of our members from the third floor. We are resolved to fight for the fiscally responsible route to take in this debate. We are not persuaded or pushed off our position by emotional arguments, which so often form the core of the other side's argument in these debates. We choose to take the fiscally responsible path because if we do not, the taxpayers of Virginia will be on the hook for this broken system forever. And it is not too much to demand, as we agreed When we formed the Merck Commission, we agreed that that would be the way that we would handle this issue. The Senate agreed that that would be the way we would handle this issue. And now here we are being held hostage, or at least on the brink of being held hostage once again, the deal being broken, people seeing opportunities to change the deal in midstream. We will not be pushed off of our position, because the reason we formed the Merck was to ensure that we fixed the broken system before we expanded it. Not too much to ask. Mr. Speaker, fiscally responsible is an okay thing to be in government, and that's what we're trying to be. That's all we're trying to be. We're not trying to hold back progress. We're not trying to deny health care to Virginians. We are trying to ensure that a system that is broken will be fixed before we make it bigger and more expensive. We are abiding by the deal that we made with the Senate. We have a structure in place to ensure these reforms. And I hope the message of yesterday's election goes out far and wide, that the people aren't buying it, that they're going to stand with us on making sure that we have a fiscally responsible path forward, and we will not succumb to threats. Mr. Speaker, we need a clean budget. We are so close to having a clean budget. It would take days for the conferees to agree on a final budget if it were not for this issue. And the entire reason we formed the Merck was to take this issue out of the budget process. And yet here we are. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, I would hope that we would put this Medicaid expansion issue in the posture that we always intended it to be, which is to fix it before we expand it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.